Happy Friday and welcome to another edition of the Better Baseball MLB DFS podcast here on the Better Sports Network and Fantasy Alarm. I am James Grande, joined once again by Colby Conway. Colby, this is our final song and dance this week, as at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time when the live stream comes around, Justin Fensterman will be joining me. It has been an honor and a privilege to share the Brandon Marsh battlefield with you, my friend, and Victor Carantini, the latest one of your fantastic random home run calls, because it has been a doozy this week. How you feeling headed into Friday? And first and foremost, happy Friday.
Yes, happy Friday to you as well. Looking forward to this slate. For the first time in a couple days, we finally have maybe more than one good pitching option. So it'll actually be fun to break down some of the top arms instead of just saying like, well, we know it's going to be insert ace here and let's figure it out from there. And I'll give you a little credit too. Keaton Wynn, pretty good.
Yeah,
Pretty
I
good.
mean, one mistake to a guy that you can't make a mistake to, and that's all she wrote. 2-run home run for Vladdy ends up being the difference there. It's a 2-run final official in Toronto. But yeah, he was pretty good. He was very efficient. Not a lot of strikeouts, very efficient. Pretty solid SP2 when you look around. Scherzer was really good. Bassett was really good. JP France was really good. And then, Hauser got hit around, and so did JP France. So, pretty good Thursday slate overall. Colby, why don't we dive into Friday, since it's a big slate, 12 games on the main slate. Take a look at Vegas first and see if there's anything worth noting. The first thing I see, we have another core slate, Detroit headed to town.
Yep. Kind of like Detroit. We're going to talk about it a little bit, but there's some good spots for them in there. Looking at some of these games, Boston, Toronto coming in at 9, over under of 9 with Jose Barrios and James Paxton on the mound. That one's interesting. Minnesota, Baltimore coming in at 8.5. Pablo Lopez has not been great of late, so that could be a potential over spot. There's some Baltimore bets that I like that we'll talk about in a little bit. Looks like the Dodgers Kansas City game's coming out, 9.5. Dodgers heavy favorites. Jordan Lyles is pitching, so they must assume that the Dodgers are going to do the lion's share of the work. He's at least the probable as we're looking at this. So looking at that one, and then of course another double digit in cores, just like you said.
Yeah, so why don't we jump in? A lot of options to go through. So why don't we break down the pitcher position first, and why don't you give us your top pitching options of the night?
I wish there wasn't that mid-back issue that's just clouding McClanahan a little bit. It's apparently he's good. He threw his bullpen. He's got his week. I wish I had more comfort with him, because this is an absolute smash spot. Over the last 2 weeks, Seattle's nearly striking out 35% of the time against lefties. 35. That's insane. That's way too high. And for the entire season, if 2 weeks is a small sample size, for the season, only 2 teams strike out more against lefties than the Seattle Mariners. So McClanahan's in a very good spot. I really like Freddie Peralta, even though Pittsburgh necessarily isn't striking out a ton of late against righties. They do have the lowest WRC plus in baseball, and an 80 ISO. Not a 480, not a 280, not a 180, an 80, a .080. So Freddie P is in a very, very appealing spot. And then really a potential ace. I know he's been horrible of late, like Chase Anderson horrible of late in terms of like the amount of runs that he's allowed. But I like Bobby Miller, Kansas City. They're not very good. There's some appeal here if you just don't look at those last 2. But if I'm not mistaken, and I don't want to, over exaggerate here, but didn't Domingo Germán have like 2 really bad outings? And then he comes out and throws a perfect game. So another bad offense. I don't know if we're going to catch that lightning in a bottle, but Bobby Miller I know he's been bad of late, but he seems a little underpriced on this slate going up against the Royals.
Yeah, and you know what? Like, we've talked about San Francisco a bunch the last couple of days. They have a lot of very good lefties in their lineup. And Houston also, is the reigning World Series champion. So like, he has not had it easy. I mean, he started off Atlanta, Washington, New York, Philly. He ran into 2 good offenses, Kansas City is not that. And the 4 games prior to this recent stretch, 20 plus fantasy points. And if that's what we're going to get at 8,900, I'm more than happy to get there. Anything in this, like anything below Bobby Miller really pique your interest here, Colby?
The one that I kept kind of coming back to, and it's a very weird spot to be in because I don't know if I want to stack against him or use him in my lineup because it can go both ways. But Dean Kramer has not been bad of late, and Minnesota does strike out a lot. He's got a 4.34 ERA with about a strikeout per inning, and he's averaging nearly 6 innings per start here in June. Like,
Yep.
if he can get 6 innings for us, I'm a little worried that he's going to serve up multiple home runs again, like he has done the past couple of times. But they're like, I'm torn because I really like Kramer in the spot as kind of a little bit of a contrarian arm, but at the same point, I kind of like some upside Minnesota left-handed bats against Kramer. So, like I said, I don't know whether to play him or stack against them because I can make an argument either way.
Yeah, and I think that's someone you're gonna obviously use in tournaments because the home runs that he's allowing is pretty scary right now. Multi home runs in 3 of his last 4 starts. But you're right, the strikeouts have been pretty consistent, and he is pitching deep into games, and he has a good offense behind him. 8 wins on the year, so I'm okay getting a Dean Kramer. Honestly, I'm also okay, and I don't want to make it sound like it's a homer pick, but I am okay getting to Luis Severino. There was things suggesting that he had been just getting very unlucky in that recent bad stretch. And then he blanked Texas. He looked really good. The velocity looks really good for Severino. The pitch count looked really good. And I said this a few starts ago, and I think it was the Mets start. And it was that Mets game. It was a 7.5 total. It was him versus Verlander or him versus Scherzer. And I was like, this is not a $7,100 pitcher. And he obviously made me look stupid because he got shelled. But like, I'm still saying he is not a $7,400 pitcher when he is at full strength. He is a good quality starter who has like ace type stuff when he is at his best. And I'm not suggesting he is at his best, but I think a 6 inning shutout of the best offense or arguably the best offense in baseball is something that can get you jump started to something more. So I like Luis Severino, and you know, we thought the Cardinals were a good pick on Thursday against a guy that struggled against righties, and they threw 4 righties in the first 6 hitters, and they got blanked. So this team in St. Louis just can't figure it out. The Yankees definitely have some momentum coming off the perfect game. They followed that up with a 10-run outing against Oakland. So I kind of like Severino because I'm just going to keep going back to the well of this guy is this guy's a 9K pitcher at when he's going well, that we're getting at 7,400. So I like Luis Severino quite a bit.
Yep, can't fault you there. He sometimes, like when we get to talking about some Detroit bats, we're going to talk about sometimes it's buying the situation more so than the player.
Right.
But this one, we're buying the talent of the player. He's,
Buying the talent. Yep.
if he gets back to full health, we'll be laughing at the fact that at one point he was $7,400 for us.
Correct.
So
Absolutely
yeah,
true.
take the value while you can.
Anybody else on the mound that you have like any interest, like any dumpster dives here? Because I think we were messing around with the pronunciation of someone's name. Do you have any interest in Severino's opposition on the other side of this game?
I want to, but only if you're making a bunch of lineups in a contest. It's very risky, but Matthew Liberatore, I love attacking this Yankees lineup. I know they're starting to come around a little bit of late, but coming off the perfect game and then putting up 10 runs and Josh Donaldson homered in a game they won, which shouldn't happen.
Dude,
It shouldn't happen. It shouldn't happen,
It
but
shouldn't.
he
It
did.
really
But
shouldn't.
I mean, Yankees are striking 26% of the time, and here against lefties in the month of June. So I think he's worth a dart throw. But again, depending on the contest, even like a 3 max entry, I don't think I can get to him in even one. I think it's got to be one of those, if it's you got 10, 15, 20 entries, maybe you toss him in 1 or 2. But he's just the epitome of a dart throw. He could go 6 scoreless innings. And even if he does, he may not get the win because if Severino's on, it's not a great matchup there. But the Yankees offense, more often than not over the last 2 weeks, have not been what we've seen of late.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's something that we look into in larger field tournaments because also like the last few times he's made trips around this rotation, it hasn't exactly gone well, and he hasn't really pitched deep into games. So 56 pitches his last time against the Cubs is not great, Bob. Not great. I don't have anything else down here. I think Severino is as far down as I'd like to go. And if you want to take a dart throw at Soroka making his appearance again, he just looked really bad. And the Marlins are also coming off like this awesome sweep of the Sox where Jazz Chisholm just comes back and it's just like, yo, biz natches, I'm back, and they just like are gonna go off to the races and whatever. But let's move on to the infield, Colby, where I think we have some interesting decisions to be made here. Who are your top infielders of the day?
I talked about it a little bit in that Baltimore game. I really like Gunnar Henderson. And when you go into it a little bit, he's got 360 WOBA versus right-handed pitching this season. But when you look, Pablo Lopez has an ERA over 5 here in the month of June. During that stretch, lefties have hit him at a 317 clip. It hasn't been for a ton of damage, more death by 1,000 cuts. But a guy like Henderson, if he can get into one, he can get us what we need in a swing or two. And you look, he's hit safely in quite a few in a row now. And their fantasy points have been quite good. So I really, really, really like Gunnar Henderson. I also like Marcus Semien, right-handers versus Ronel Blanco for the Astros. It's been quite profitable this season. Semien's good against righties. And when you look at Blanco, 2.06 homer per 9 this year. Home runs have been a problem for him. Righties are his kryptonite. So I really like some Texas right-handed bats. And then the last one, since we never talk about catchers, when we do the preview of infield, they always seem to get tossed by the wayside. I can't believe Elias Diaz is priced where he is. It's in Coors. It's against a right-hander. And when you look at the catchers, there's quite a few priced up above him. I'm very, very surprised about that. So I think Diaz is I hate to say a sure thing at catcher, a guy that we're going to lock in right away, but I'm very surprised there's this many catchers priced up higher than him, especially against a righty who doesn't do well against righties.
Right. And Elias Diaz does all of his damage at home. If you look at these splits, I mean, no surprise, right? It's Coors Field. This is the story as old as time, but 944 OPS at home, 7 of his 9 home runs at home, hitting 328 at home compared to 244 on the road. And I mean, yeah, he hits third right in the middle of their lineup. So, or fourth, whatever they're hitting him these days. It's either third or fourth. So ideal spots for him. And I'll piggyback right off that and go to CJ Crone, who over the last few years has also been better, weirdly enough, because he started his career where he was dominant against lefties, and then he got to Coors and to Colorado and only started hitting righties, and that's again been the case. And I know he has struggled. He struggled a little bit before the injury, and then since he came back, like it's only been 2 games, but 2 for 4 on Wednesday with the RBI. I love CJ Crone here against Michael Lorenzen, and we were talking about it before we got on air. Lorenzen is a ground baller, and anytime you get ground ballers in that thick Colorado air, the ball just doesn't sink anymore. It just is a flat fastball, and that's why people don't want to pitch there. And I think that's going to cause a lot of problems. And you've already said it with Elias Diaz. Like, righties are what get to Michael Lorenzen far more. So I like CJ Crone quite a bit. And I like Brandon Drury, who I have used a lot against left-handed pitching throughout Brandon Drury's like last few seasons. Last year, like I don't think anybody saw the year that Brandon Drury had in Cincinnati or San Diego coming, but it was like largely against lefties, and he's following it up again this year. He's actually been just kind of good against everybody, which is wild to think that we waited how many years into Brandon Drury's career for him to like turn into something, because it was a long time coming, I guess, for Brandon Drury. And I love this spot against Tommy Henry, who he's looked better over his last few starts. But like still like seasonal numbers against righties, like 780 OPS, 339 WOBA allowed, still like less than ideal. So I really like Brandon Drury here. And honestly, I'm gonna probably get to a lot of Angels. Like Eduardo Escobar is someone who hits lefties extremely well. He's going to be hitting at the bottom of that lineup. Hunter Renfroe, when we get to the outfield, like there's a lot of guys. Chad Wallach, for what it's worth, you want to just make this a catcher only podcast, we can. Chad Wallach, 10 for 33 with 4 home runs and a 450 WOBA against left-handed pitching this year. Like, I mean, like, again, I'm not like sitting here advocating for catch, and we're not going to sit here and advocate for catchers all the time. But if you're not going Diaz and you want someone who's cheaper, I can't even find $3,100 to go to Wallach. I know he's been really struggling, but he's hitting lefties extremely well this year. So just some food for thought there. I'll tee this up for you. What is your favorite value in the infield that may or may not come from one singular team that usually would not get any rub on a on a MLB DFS podcast, but does deserve some love just considering where they are?
Yeah, in Coors, I'm going to say it. I'm a sucker for Andy Ibanez on this
Me
slate.
too.
I love it. I mean, 343 WOBA against lefties, 4 extra base hits over his last 16 at bats against lefties, including a 341 ISO. I mean, and look at the price.
Yep, free.
The price is insane.
It's free.
Like, I'm not trying to overreact here, but let's overreact a little bit. This is a great matchup.
Agreed.
So Andy Ibanez is one, and if you don't do Elias Diaz at catcher and you don't do Chad Wallach at catcher, take a look at Jake Rogers. Let's get a third catcher on the board here.
Dude, let's go.
Third one to make up for it, and I'm looking over here at Jake Rogers' numbers this year. He may only be hitting 225 against lefties and 40 at bats, but what if I were to tell you that the man's sporting a 550 ISO against left-handed pitching this season?
Dude.
I mean, listen, we're not hurting for catcher tonight, baby. It's a beautiful thing. As a former catcher, I love this offensive fireworks display that I'm envisioning being this big magical display, 4th of July-esque, and we're just going to get some like crappy like cul-de-sac little sparkler show. Like that's what I'm worried about is going to happen behind the dish, but we're not hurting for options at least. At least we have that.
Dude, Jake Rogers looks like if he didn't play baseball, he would just pound Budweisers and drive a school bus.
Not at the same time though.
Not at the same no. Definitely not promoting that. Separate times. Like after his shift of driving the school bus, he's gonna sit down at the river and just pound Budweisers by the case. But like I mean
I could see him leading like a motorcycle group too.
Yeah, also, yeah, that's a good one. He'd have like he's such a big dude. He'd have such a little vest. It'd be hilarious if he had like the motorcycle vest and everything too. You know. I mean, him and his handlebar mustache are a good play heading into Coors. I guess it's worth mentioning. I guess we have to. I know the Dodgers game is playing on Thursday, but there was hail, and we do have another icon here for rain in the forecast. So definitely something to monitor because if there's going to be a hailstorm, I mean, they've clearly showed that they'll wait it out because they started 2 hours after the initial game was supposed to start, but worth monitoring. And I know you wanted to show some love to Spencer Torkelson as well, who double donged and now has 3 home runs over his last 2 games. And this is what everyone hoped he would be. The home run hitting guy who hit 220, not 220, but like at least if you're going to hit 220, hit for power. He hasn't done anything, but the last few days he has hit a lot of home runs. So I like Andy Ibanez quite a bit. I'll show some love to Andrew Vaughn, $3,200. Excuse me. He continues to just be very productive. 5 RBIs his last 3 games, and he's hitting righties as well as he's hitting lefties. Anthony Volpe kind of been really good for the Yankees since this little switch of the stance that he's received. Another 2-hit game on Thursday. That's now multi-hit games in 3 straight. And if Liberatore struggles again, Volpe, we also know has an infinite amount of speed if he reaches base. So 3,200 for Anthony Volpe, who was approaching 5K not too long ago. I'd have some interest in. Any other infield value you want to take a look at? Or are you ready to move on to the outfield?
Last one I got is Wilmer Flores, 389 average over his last 18, 413 slug versus righties, and he gets Carlos Carrasco, who at home this year, ERA over 8, and righties have a 413 WOBA against him. So another value option there.
Cool. I like Wilmer quite a bit. When we head to the outfield, I'm just gonna ask right away. Just get this out of the way now. Would you play Shohei Ohtani as my dog continues to try to get in through my? Uh,
Listen, I'm all for breaking down the door to get Ohtani in the lineup. So I'm right there with the dog. I agree. I mean, it doesn't matter at this point. Just throw him in the lineup. If you have the money, throw him in the lineup and don't look back.
I don't know if I can't leave the podcast technically, so like I will ask him to stop doing it. But like this is the most ridiculous thing of all time. This is
Let him
terrible.
in. He loves all of our value options. Let the dog in. It's the value options. I'll run the fort. Yeah, look at that. See, let him in. He sits behind the couch. Everybody wins. But yeah, why not play Shohei Ohtani? Yeah, see,
what a
see
what
now,
a
now everybody wins. Isn't that great?
Until he starts crying. Colby, what are we doing? Run through some of your top outfield options as my dog is now let in the door and now wants to go out the door, by the way. This is quality content, is now laying by the door.
That tracks. Obviously, Shohei Ohtani. Obviously, Ronald Acuna. Won't fault anybody for playing those guys. I also like Acuna's teammate, Michael Harris. Harris has cut back on the strikeouts in June. 256 ISO this month, and he actually has a 264 ISO against righties. And he's going to be in a very good spot there. You already talked about Jazz Chisholm, so yep, let's play him. And then you also talked about Goat Renfro. So Hunter Renfro is going to be he should be very, very popular in this slate.
Yeah, I mean he's hit lefties extremely well, and he's just one of those power bats that we want in our Angel stacks. That the only reason I like Ohtani being first base eligible on DraftKings is the fact that they have 9 outfielders you could play on a daily slate. So I do like the fact that at least we have that for Ohtani where you could play him in the infield. I'm gonna keep playing Luis Robert. I know it's a righty here, but even in a game where he doesn't hit a home run, he has 2 stolen bases, and that's the allure of Luis Robert and what he can do when he is fully healthy, which we haven't seen a lot. So I love Luis Robert here, 4,700. I'm not just continually going to the Yankees because I am a Yankees fan. I mean, I haven't talked about a Yankee in maybe like a month and a half. Giancarlo Stanton, also a guy kind of maybe waking up here. And that's why I'm a little scared of getting to Liberatore because 10 runs, he is direct. He scores 1, hits 2 in with a double. Now we have 5 RBIs over his last 2 games. And before that, he was terrible, but now hits in 4 or 5. I like Giancarlo Stanton quite a bit at 4,500. I'll go to Nolan Jones at 4,500 as well. I think, as long as there is a righty on the mound, Nolan Jones profiles really well. That's really it for me in this like top tier. What are we looking at for value, Colby?
Well, I gave you a break here, but I got to do it for my BVP people out there. I got to do it. For what it's worth, Alex Verdugo 7 for 17 with a home run in his career against Jose Barrios. So that's something you could look at there. I love Garrett Cooper, 205 ISO against righties this year, and he has a 600 slug over his last 10 games. And like you said earlier, Mike Soroka is just not good. So I'm all for going at him. And 428 Wilbo to righties, 423 to lefties. So again, I talked about Jazz earlier, but Garrett Cooper's in a really good spot. And then as I look at it here, I know we talked about Luis Severino. I just can't quit Jordan Walker against a righty.
That's perfectly fine. I
just can't do it.
I can't.
And Severino's worse against righties too. At least this year he has been. So I can't quit Jordan Walker against righties, especially at this price point. Good Lord.
What do we got for Jordan Walker here still?
I think it's 32.
Oh wow, they really boomed his price up $100. Huh? That's big. That was a big jump. Good for DraftKings. They're really making us think about it.
And Matt Vierling.
Yeah, I mean, just to sprinkle on top one more Detroit Tiger, Matt, and you know what? Matt Vierling's been awesome leading off for Detroit. He has been awesome. So I'll give you that for sure. I'm interested to see if Arizona will toy with the idea of Jake McCarthy at a leadoff spot more, because now that we're getting like last year's version ish, we're still not getting the power that we saw last year, but speed is on full display. He actually looks like a very solid MLB hitter again. If he were to lead off 3,100, I have no problem going there. And I'm interested to see what they do because Corbin Carroll left Thursday's game. So if Corbin Carroll is out for any amount of time, that might just naturally move McCarthy up the lineup. I'm okay getting to any Dodger lefty here. Hayward, Peralta, Outman, they all get Marsh, who's making his debut, and he was really bad at AAA. That's where I think probably you and I lacked a little bit. Dodgers throughout this show, since they're getting this kid who, if you look, his name is Alec Marsh, and he had a 4.62 ERA between double and triple A. This guy has not been very good. He was a second round pick in the 2019 draft, but clearly has not lived up to much in the minors. So I will be definitely interested in Dodgers here. Colby, why don't we go through your cornerstones here? The Colby Conway cornerstones, the Triple C, not Colby Community College, but Colby Conway's cornerstones. What do we got for each stop on the cornerstone?
Yep, home run calls Marcus Semien. Love the matchup, so he's going to go yard. Top stack, because as it should be, the Detroit Tigers. Contrarian stack, don't know how contrarian it is, but let's get those Angels bats in there. I like that for the contrarian stack. Star of the night's going to be Ronald Acuna, and the value play of the night will be our second baseman / outfielder in our lineup, Mr. Andy Ibanez.
Love that. I'm going to go my home run call. I'm going to go with Giancarlo Stanton. He's always been a very streaky player, and when he's going, he looks like the best player in the world, and when he doesn't, he looks like the worst player in the world. He's been good over the last couple days. My top stack, I'm going to go with the Dodgers. My contrarian stack, I'm going to go with the Yankees. I like the Yankees against lefties here. Harrison Bader, someone we didn't mention, hits lefties well this year. My MVP of the night, I'm going to go with JD Martinez getting the right-handed pitcher. And then my value play of the night, I'm going to go Anthony Volpe. So why don't we get into the lineups here, Colby? What do we want to do at pitcher? Do we want to go up to McClanahan as we have a couple minutes left, or do we feel more comfortable like in the Peralta, Bobby Miller range?
I tried building a lineup with McClanahan, Miller, and I really struggled. It got bad quick.
Okay.
I think we could probably get away with Peralta, Miller. I think you could do both of those guys. We'll probably have a better chance to at least afford one or two big bats in there with all the value that we have at our fingertips.
Yeah, I mean, let's just plug. We're gonna plug Ibanez in at second base. Who else do you want to plug from Detroit? Like, who are your must-own Detroit? Vierling in the outfield. Like, do you feel most comfortable about him, or do you feel? And he's been really good.
Yeah, put Vierling. We'll go Vierling and Ibanez. We could always go Rogers at catcher if we need to find like hundreds of dollars to save, but if I would really prefer to try to get Elias Diaz if possible, because he's only a couple $100 more.
I'm down. What do we want to do at first base? You know what I want to do at short? We're gonna go Anthony Volpe at short to save us a couple $100.
Put JD in the outfield.
Who else? Who is your home run call?
Semien.
I could put Ibanez in the outfield.
I think Semien's going to run us out because he's so much.
Yes, he is.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah,
that ain't going to work. Go back to Ibanez at second. What about Renfroe in the outfield for that last spot?
Yep, love that.
Because he's not,
Yeah, no, I think that'll be bad. Yeah, I think that gives us room to work.
What's Garrett Cooper's price?
Garrett Cooper is 3,400.
Okay.
And then 37 for a third baseman. Eduardo Escobar?
There you go. You talked about him.
Freddie Peralta, Bobby Miller, Elias Diaz, Garrett Cooper, Andy Ibanez, Eduardo Escobar, Anthony Volpe, Matt Vierling, JD Martinez, Hunter Renfroe, $400 left over. That'll do it for today's podcast. We will be back at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Me and Justin Fensterman. Big shout out to Colby all week for filling in on the podcast and the live stream. We'll be back again tomorrow. Catch you guys later.